So now let's talk about status code families. So the first digit now, so every HTTP response now comes with a 3-digit status code. The number tells you what happened. It tells the client what happened. So the number of the status code tells the client what happened immediately. Before it reads a single byte of a response body, it first knows what happened from the number of the status code. We have the 1XX, which is like the 100 family. This is informational. I receive your request, still working on it. That's what it does. You will most likely not see this type of status code, but that's what it does. Request receive, still working on it. Then we have the 200 family. So the 200 family now means sources. Everything worked. So we have the 200, they mean sources in their diverse form. Then we have the 300 family, which means redirection. What you want to do is somewhere here, somewhere else, which means they are redirecting you to another page. That's what happened when you use 300 family. And we have the 400, which is something we are quite familiar with, which means client error. You did something wrong. So a client can have a 404 error if they do something wrong, enter the wrong data, or press the wrong button. Then we have the 500 error, which means I did something wrong. And that means you, the programmer, you, the server, you programming the server side of this information, you've done something wrong. That's what the 500 error, server error does. Let's talk about the code that you return every day. The 200 now is okay. So this is the universal, it worked. Use it for successful get, put, pouch, delete responses that you are returning data. If you are returning the data from any of these responses, you return a 200. Then for 201 means created, which means specifically for post when you create a new resource itself. So always pair this with a location header pointing to the new resource. Don't just return 200 when you create something. That is technically incorrect. That information is not correct. Don't say they are all 200. And we have no content. No content means sources, but there is nothing to return. This is used for delete or for put and patch when you don't want to send the update resource back to the client. That's what you use this for. So there's a principle here now, which means a well-designed API returns 200 for reads, 201 for create, and 204 for delete. If every successful response is returned 200 regardless, your API is losing information. And that every client has to work around. So you should make sure that your API now should communicate the information well to the client. Okay, so we have redirect and client error. So when we talk about redirect here now, 301 means move permanently. So the resource has a new URL. Browser, client cache. Browsers and client now, they cache this forever. Like, it's to be used very carefully. So when you get a 301 error status code, it means what you are looking for now has a new URL. So this URL is no longer the address. It has a new URL. That's what it means. Then we have the 302, which means found. Temporary, it means like, okay now, there's a temporary redirect, client follow it, but does not cache it permanently. It is not cached permanently. So there's a temporary redirect and the client follow it. So let's say now, okay, there's this state now, okay, you want to follow a user and you cannot follow a user if you are not logged in. So it can redirect you to the login page. Then we have the 304 now. This is used when with caching header. You already have the latest version. Use your cache. I think it's pronounced cache. Yes, use your cache. You already have the latest version. Use your cache. In that sense. Then we have the client error, which are the 400 family. So you send something wrong. We have the 400, which stands for bad request. This means like you have to enter some. You are trying to sign up for your user profile, but you didn't enter your username. So that's like a missing field. You get a 404 bad request error. We have 401 unauthorized and not authenticated. So despite the names now, it means like you are unauthenticated, which means you don't have access. Okay, you need to log in to provide a token despite the name. This means unauthenticated, not unauthorized, which means you need to log in to provide the name. And we also have forbidden. So you are authenticated, but you don't have the permission. You are authenticated, but the server knows who you are. You just are not allowed to perform this task or to retrieve this information. That's what 403 does. Then we have 404. And what 404 does is not found. So the result doesn't exist. Also, you can use this intentionally when you don't want to reveal something that exists, like a user profile that is private. Returning 404 instead of 403 hides the fact that this account did not exist at all. This is like, okay, now when you have a GitHub repo now, if the GitHub repo is private and it is my GitHub repo, if I send you the link, you will get a 404 error, even though the GitHub repo does exist. But because you don't have access to see it, you won't see it, you will get a 404 error. But if I add you as a collaborator to the repo, you will see that this 404 error will no longer be 404, right? It will be clear and ready. Then we have the 422, which is 422, 422. So the request is valid, but the values inside fails a validation. So that means like you have a valid Jensen, but the value failed validation. Right. So FastAPI uses this by default for pandatic validation error in that sense. Then we have 429, which is too many requests. You have reached a rate limit. If you are very used to connecting external API, you should have come across this quite a couple of times, which is the 429 error, which means there's an issue with too many requests that you've passed on or you have tried to work with. Then we have the server-side error. So when server fails, you get a 500 family error. So 500 should never reach the user in production. That means this means your error handling failed in that sense. So 500 means internal server error, which means generic server failed. Right. An unhandled exception, it's your application. Or there's a cache of something that you should never return in the first place. This is a catch all that you should never intentionally return. So that's like a mistake at your hand, a bug at your hand. Then we have the 402 bad gateway. So your proxy or load balancer got a bad response from the upstream server. This often means that your application is crashing or is unreachable. So it's going to give us a 502 error. That's like the server is not running. Okay, we have 503 for service unavailable. If the server is temporarily down, deployment maintenance overloaded, you are going to get a 503 error. Often using deployment though. This like for maintenance window and for other server overloaded period. And we also have 504, which is gateway timeout. So if the upstream is too slow, usually changing DB query or external API call. So like let's say you are creating a DB and this DB query is quite slow, or the external call is quite slow, it's going to give you 504 error for a gateway timeout over there.